Ever? Yeah. What have you been to? That makes sense. We have like thousands of hiking events. You went to a hiking event? That's great. What about you? Went to our hiking fair.
I can't unmute my camera. Oh, what's going on?
We lost them. They'll be back.
Yeah, I just can't unmute my camera. I'm here, but for some reason, technology is so wonderful at it.
Guys, we're Toastmasters. We start right on time. So let's get started. Welcome to our very first hybrid meeting. What we have done, like this is what after 2 years, we are meeting in person like this. And we're so honored to have Meetup CEO with us today. So look around, look to your left, look to your right. And folks on Zoom, look to your window on left, look to your window on right. If you don't know each other, just say hi and meet with them. It is my honor. So now that we have met with each other, and I hope folks on the Zoom have already done that too. You can send a private chat to each other saying hi. Now that we have met with each other, how about we meet with the Meetup CEO, David Siegel, who is here. Let me give a very brief introduction about him. He is a CEO of Meetup, as we know. He is a former CEO of Investopedia. He teaches entrepreneurship in Columbia University. Wow, that's a course I would like to take. And he's author of his recent book, Decide and Conquer. So with the Toastmasters, who and applause, let's invite David on the stage. David.
Yeah, thank you for this, right? Okay, let's just make sure that this works. Always test before it. Okay, it worked. What do you know? Okay. Oh wow, you guys are professional. Woo, magic. So I suggested that because I don't normally do this, but because this is Toastmasters, which is oftentimes all about kind of presentation style and helping somebody become hopefully a strong presenter, I thought it might be worthwhile as I'm kind of presenting, I will try to, if I do certain thing while I'm presenting, I will take like a step back and I'll be like, this is the David Siegel step back. And I'll move myself over a little bit here. And I'll step myself back and I'll explain why I'm doing something. Does that sound good? Okay. So what I just did is I asked you a question while I was speaking. One of the techniques that's very, very important is just engagement. And what you're going to try to, hopefully going to see is while I'm talking, I'm going to do different things to try to drive engagement from each of you, because if you're engaged, then it's going to be a more, you'll actually remember things and you pay better attention, the more engaged you actually are. Whenever I get up to speak, I always do this, by the way, literally always do the same thing. Clap my hands. Sometimes it just wakes people up. People aren't used to seeing a hand clap. So I clap my hands, and I always say the same exact thing when I'm about to start, which is, I want to share with you a story. see the same thing happen. Whenever I'm in a conference, I start with this. I want to share with you a story. Suddenly, you know, in your conferences, especially tech conferences, everyone is basically just looking at their phone the entire time. And I say, I want to share with you a story. Everyone's heads look up. Why? Because storytelling goes back to like when people were in their beds as little kids with their moms and their dads, and they're telling them stories, or when you're a parent and you're telling stories, there's something about storytelling that just, it changes the brain, and people love hearing stories. So whenever I start off a presentation, I always talk about a story. So here's the story. I want to talk about Meetup's founder. As we all know, just a few days ago, was September 11th. And September 11th will always be a tragedy of tragedies, you know, in the United States and around the world. What most of you don't know is that it was actually the conception of Meetup. Right after 9/11, I became CEO 4 years ago. Our founder, Scott Heiferman, was in his lobby of this building. And he was in a state of, you know, confusion and just a trance and just depressed. And he noticed he didn't want to be by himself. And he saw no one wanted to be by themselves. Everyone was like loitering around, hanging around the lobby, and no one wanted to be back in their rooms by themselves. He walked over to someone and he said, "Hey, what floor do you live on?" And the person said, I live on the 5th floor. He said, "Wait, I live on the 5th floor. You must have just moved in." "No, I've been living on the 5th floor for like 2 years." They never met. And then another person that also lived on this 5th floor, I guess he's not that friendly, he's busy going to meet with us all the time. Although meetups didn't exist actually. And he met someone else. And that was on his floor. He never really minded. He just said to himself, I think he said out loud, "It shouldn't take tragedy to build community. What can I do to build community outside of town?" He went back to his home, his room. We actually had a white paper. And on September 11th, I kid you not, he put this up on his white paper, the etchings of Meetup. And he said there's going to be different towns, there's going to be different topics, there's going to be different events, there's going to have different cities, where people can be members. He etched the whole concept out. And his goal was, how do we build community, you know, after the tragedy of 9/11? He launched our first website because on June 14th, we launched our first website because he said, "I'm turning 30 on June 14th, and as a birthday gift, I need everyone to be able to have it." And that was a website. Remember how old websites used to look? I mean, it's pretty incredibly ugly, but that's the way, you know, websites used to look back then. And you know what? When you launch a product, anyone here ever worked on entrepreneurship? Anyone in Zoom work on entrepreneurship at all? Start a business? Try something? Okay. When you launch a new product, you don't know what you're going to get. You have no idea what you're going to get. And what Meetup got when we launched his first product in 2002, the biggest number of groups at Meetup is actually witches. There were more witches groups on Meetup than any other category of groups. For some reason, and it's interesting, like people who have been interested in Wicca wanted to find other, mostly women, who are also interested in Wicca, and they use Meetup as that platform. But it's a perfect example of when you launch a product, you can have all these grand ideas of how the business is going to be, but it doesn't actually matter until you go live and see what actually people are legitimately interested in. You can see things like people have been around for a while, like myself, Xena and Tori Amos and Radiohead were some of the big things back, 20 plus years ago. And actually how Meetup became a success was in 2004. There was a very little known person who was running for senator of Illinois. And he stood in front of everyone and he said, if anyone can get 500 people, just 500 people to come to an event, it doesn't matter where in the state of Illinois it is, I will show up and I will speak. And who was that person? Put it into chat if you know. Who was that person or in person? The answer was Barack Obama. Barack Obama, so first 9/11 was the conception of Meetup. And Meetup became successful largely because of both Howard Dean, who was running for president in 2004, and Barack Obama, who was running for senator at that time, had embraced this concept of using community to build strong following. And then things have obviously grown from there. And the reason why I care so much about Meetup is because of our mission. Our mission, simply put, is to cure the loneliness epidemic that exists. 46% of people, not sometimes, not occasionally, but regularly feel lonely. And what's terrifying is that among people, oh, let me make this smaller so it's not blocking the screen for you all. Among people who are Gen Zers, it's as high as 62%. And oh, by the way, this is from a 2020 study prior to the pandemic. It has not gotten better during the pandemic in terms of people's feeling of loneliness. And it's terrifying because loneliness is correlated to depression. It's correlated to anxiety. It's God forbid correlated to self-harm. If you can cure loneliness, if we could get people to meet others and find their people, then from an emotional health, mental health, and also that relates to physical health standpoint, the world could really change. That's what we do at Meetup. 25% of people don't even have not one confidant to go to in a time of need, according to a study as well. And then there's Meetup. We have 60 million members worldwide in 190 countries. We're in every single country, every major country except for one. Who wants to guess the major country that we're not in? That's exactly right. North Korea is the major country. By the way, it's a fact. Again, whenever one's talking or presenting, it's good to ask questions. It just gets people to be more engaged. North Korea is the one country that we're not in, but I've gotten the lead into a famous ex-basketball player named Dennis Rodman, who apparently has a big relationship with the head of North Korea, and we're hoping that maybe we can get in there. We'll see. I don't know. We'll have to have certain haircuts from what I've been told. We're in Silicon Valley area, roughly. There were 2.4 million members in Silicon Valley. Across all 100 meetup groups, we have close to 3,000 different meetup groups in this area, and we have 620 events every single week. So it's something that we're really proud of. We're not proud about just because of the numbers, we're proud about it because of part of our mission, which is curing the loneliness epidemic. Many companies have a very specific KPI that they're focused on. It's usually about revenue and profit. Our KPI is 30 million. And the reason why it's 30 million, it's not our revenue target, it's the number of connections that we look to facilitate every year. So if anyone's into math, you could use remember factorials and figure out how many connections. There's 5 people in the room, how many connections there are. There's some kind of formula to figure that out, right? You probably remember that. Okay, so our goal is to facilitate at least 30 million connections between people every year. And if we've done that, then we want it to be 40 million. We're not happy, but we're like, that's the goal that we have, to try to achieve. Everyone's okay on chat? Someone monitor chat? Everyone's okay? In Zoom? Okay, I want to make sure. Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs all around. Okay. 2.5 years ago, the pandemic hit. And I remember like yesterday, we're actually in the middle of divesting out of WeWork. And by the way, if there's time for questions at the end, which there will be, I'm happy to talk about what it was like to work for Adam Newman and what it was like to be part of the WeWork culture. And we're divesting out of WeWork. We're looking to sell us. And 95% of our events overnight, literally, within like a couple of days, canceled in China. It wasn't like 20%. Every single event in China was basically canceled. Like, okay, there's been things that have happened in China in the past and that haven't necessarily made its way to Europe. And I'm like, this will be something that happens. We're okay. And we see like what is happening in northern Italy. Remember this or not? But in northern Italy, every event got canceled again overnight. Every event in Northern Italy. What is happening here? And then finally, coincidentally, ironically, one of the first people in New York City to go to Mount Sinai Hospital, one of the biggest hospitals in New York, was a Meetup employee. And we shut our office down. Big article came out about Meetup can't meet up anymore. We couldn't get together as a company, and we shut down. I think we got home like March 5th or something, March 6th, way earlier than most other places. And then we were able to make a pivot and move towards online meetup events. Since then, we've had 3.5 million online events during this time. And a big part of it is we said, what's our goal? Is our goal IRL in person? No. Our goal is keeping people connected to each other. Our goal was building connections. We build connections. People need it during COVID, during that time of social isolation more than anything else. That was our goal. So it was such kind of a crazy experience that I decided to write a book, and I wrote a book. If anyone, no pressure, no one can get it, it's all good. I have a couple of copies here. If anyone wants a copy, happy to sign it and sell it for a nice discount if anyone wants one. If anyone's online and wants one, you can go on Amazon, it's pretty easy to get. Or if you're local, I'm happy to sign it and someone can find someone here to give it to you. But I became obsessed with the fact that in decision making, so many people struggle with decision. And for so many people, it impedes their happiness in life, it impedes their happiness in work. And I spent the time when I was working from home rather than commuting and just sort of writing kind of this book about decision making. So we're going to spend time, the rest of the time doing is I give you a little overview of Meetup. And actually, before we even go to the next thing, let me pause. Does anyone have any questions around anything I talked about regarding Meetup? And after that, we're going to go into decision-making best practice. So anyone that's always going, if you're giving a hybrid type discussion, it's always better to go to people virtual first because it's harder for them, and I sympathize. So if there's anyone that wants to put a question in chat, and I'll read it out loud, then I'm happy to. Something in chat already? Oh, there's chat. Sweet. You're getting uneven audio, a lot of bass. Is that still the case? Still the case? Hello? Okay, I'll try my best to debass, but I won't debase. I'll do my best. What questions does anyone want to add chat questions? If not, then I'm going to go here and then we'll go back to chat online. Anyone questions here about related to Meetup in any way? Yes. What's your name? Jay. Okay. So one thing I always do, whenever I ask a question, I always ask someone what's their name, because again, as a presenter, it's always good to try to form a personal connection, even if it's not a deep personal connection, but just asking someone's name is great because then afterwards I can say, hey Jay, how you doing? So it's always good to ask what's your name when they ask a question. Anyway, Jay's question was, and then again, whenever you're presenting, you always want to repeat the question because not everyone can hear it, especially people who are online. Jay's question was what's the association with WeWork? The answer is that in 2017, December of 2017, WeWork acquired you. WeWork spent close to $200 million. It was actually over double the next highest bid. WeWork is about going big or going home. A lot of times they went big and spent lots of money, and now they're going home in not as exciting ways. They spent close to $200 million to acquire Meetup. And the thinking behind it was that many WeWork offices have people who are looking for community. They're looking for connections to others. That's why they come to WeWork. And the idea was Meetup can help to build community and to build connections between people. About 6 months in, the WeWork CEO, someone named Adam Newman, I'm sure you saw on my TV, and other places, he decided that Scott Heifman, who's the founder of the story that I told, wasn't the right person to lead the company into the future. So rather than telling Scott about this, instead he started looking for someone on the side. And then Scott gets a call from one of his friends saying, hey, I didn't know you were leaving. And Scott's response was, I didn't know I was leaving either. Not good. No bueno. And that's how Scott found out that they were looking for his replacement. And then someone introduced me to someone who was on the board of WeWork, was on the board and the biggest investor in a company that I was the president of. And actually, Abra, my good friend who was visiting, was the chief operating officer of, called Seeking Alpha. I don't know if you ever heard of Seeking Alpha. So I was the president. We were like the two people underneath the CEO. And someone on the board named Michael Eisman was also on the board of WeWork. So he reached out to me. And after only 27 interviews, I'm not kidding, yeah, I ended up getting hired as the first outside CEO of New York. So that's the connection with WeWork. What other, so storytelling, right? Good. Chat question. Great. 2 questions. Awesome. I could do that. I'm a tech guy. From your research, have there been any steps on good versus bad decisions and how they have shaped up leaders? Oh, so good. What a great question. So Priya, thank you for asking that question. Yeah. I can't see you right now, but thank you for asking it.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of studies on different practices in decision-making, and we're going to get into that section soon. But I'll just tell you that one of the most important things in decision-making is actually making quick decisions. Teddy Roosevelt made the following statement. He said, the best decisions are great decisions. The next best decisions are bad decisions. And the worst decision is no decision. And you probably have all heard the concept of an MVP. Some of you maybe. What does MVP stand for? Minimum viable product. Minimum viable product. One of the things that I like to talk about is an MVD. You want to make a minimum viable decision. And the reason why that's so important in making a decision is because the goal is learning. Until you make a decision and you get out there with that product or you get out there with that decision, you can't learn about whether it's working. When it's stuck in your head, you're not learning jack. You're not learning anything. It's just, right? It's just stuck in your head. You're talking about things in your head constantly, but you're not learning anything. You're just ruminating. So in terms of one of the best practices, and we're going to go into 10 best practices for decision making, being speedy is one of the most important best practices that's out there in terms of research. Make sense? Harvard research specifically on speedy decision making. Awesome. Okay, you'll have to show me the study. I'll have to look at it later. Okay, the next one is, and by the way, the only time Avram and I could get together, he lives in Israel and I live in New York, is when he's in San Francisco and I'm in San Francisco area, the Bay Area, I should say. So we just had dinner and I invited him to come over here. Okay. Hitesh, thank you for asking a question too. You said the goal is to make 30 million connections a year. What is your definition of a connection? How do you measure it? Okay. So a connection is simply that if, let's say there's a meetup event with 8 people that go to the event, then it's person number 1 has the opportunity to meet number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Number 2 has the opportunity to meet number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Basically, it's the number of people in the room that you have an opportunity to meet. That's the idea of a connection. So everyone in this room, you may not feel connected to each other, but you each have an opportunity to make a connection to each other. And I hope that you avail yourself of that opportunity. Okay, one last question for the room. Yeah, what's your name? Emma. Very much so. So the book is about bad decision making and also good decision making. The ability to have been under WeWork gave me a front row seat on a lot of bad decisions that WeWork made in going from a $47 billion valuation to a current $3 billion valuation. Still, hey, they created a company worth $3 billion. I've never done that. That's pretty remarkable and should not be slighted in any way. But they also, quote unquote, destroyed 95% of, at their time, their valuation. And there's a lot of examples, which I'll talk about, but also in the book, around kind of decision-making by Adam, decision-making by leadership teams, the culture of WeWork versus the culture of Meetup, and the challenges from a culture standpoint. When I stood up in front of everyone, when I announced that Meetup was finally getting sold out of WeWork, I was so nervous. I was like, uh-oh, what's going to happen? People are going to get scared, they get worried, da. I got in front of everyone, I said, I have to tell you, Meetup is being sold out of WeWork. The woman in the back jumps for joy and screams, hallelujah! There was a lot of animosity between our organizations. Okay, so now what we're going to do is talk about decision making a little bit more. And hopefully there'll be some more questions. But hey, I think I should ask that. Oh, but this thing was working before.
Yeah.
Oh, it is working. Oh.
But you were in Zoom.
Oh, that's why. Okay. So who knows who this is? It's not your local rabbi. David Letterman. And David Letterman was famous for?
Talk shows, the late night show.
Right? Late night with David Letterman, the talk shows. And what in Priya did his talk shows? What did he do in his talk shows? And every single talk show, he had something in every single talk show. What was it? Top 10 lists. He had his top 10 list. So we're going to do our top 10 list of decision-making wisdom. When I speak, by the way, you can see I have crazy enthusiasm when I'm speaking. It's not fake. I'm like genuinely enthusiastic about our topic. So as Toastmaster people, I would just say enthusiasm is contagious. If you're enthusiastic when you're presenting, chances are there'll be a higher likelihood that the people who you're talking to are hopefully enthusiastic about the things that you're saying too. How do you measure enthusiasm? Tone of voice, you know, all these kind of things. Going up, going down, going all around. What we're going to do right now, because it's Toastmasters, a drum roll. We'll do it in the room. You know what a drum roll is? What's a drum roll? Wow, that stinks of a drum roll. Thank you. That's a drum roll. That's a drum roll. So what we're going to do is a drum roll of top 10 decision-making principles that are important. Here we go. Optionality when it comes to decision making. So what do I mean by this? Can you tell me this? Some decisions are trapdoor decisions. They're decisions that, you know, the door drops, you can't get out, and you're stuck. There's very few trapdoor decisions, however. Most decisions are not trapdoor decisions. Most decisions, there's different things you like. If you decide to have a child, not if you actually have a child, I'm getting political here. You have a child, that's usually a fairly trapdoor decision. Child's born. There's other, but even like getting married, even like a job, living in a city, these major decisions are not necessarily trapdoor decisions. But people have this fear, this enormous fear of decision making. One of the things that I think people don't take into account enough in making decisions is whether a decision opens up new options for yourself or whether a decision destroys options. Are you creating options or are you destroying options with the decision? Here's an example. Let's say that you're interested in finance. You could decide that you want to be an Air Force Ranger, and that would be great. But let's say you decide you want to work in finance. Nothing wrong with working not in finance. So if you decide you want to work in finance, you could, in theory, become an investment banker. Many people who work for 2 or 3 years in investment banking move on to do lots of other type things. The world is kind of your oyster. You can do so many things if you're an investment banker, lots because you learn analytical skills, you learn PowerPoint skills, you learn thinking skills, you learn presentation skills, you learn lots of great skills in investment banking. Or you could decide, let's say, to be a trader and trade commodities or trade something. So my brother-in-law is a trader. He started as a trader. He doesn't love being a trader, but it's like the only thing he knows how to do. It did create all these options. It's such a niche, very specific thing that he wasn't able to like transition to something else, even though he probably could have, wasn't able to transition to something else because he was, stuck being a commodities trader for a long time. So when thinking about a decision, I want you to really think about, actually, I should pause for a second. I want every person in the room to think about, and actually we're going to make sure people say, and also people who are online, a decision that they need to make. I'm going to call on you about a decision that you're thinking about. It could be as simple as like, what do you want to have for dinner tomorrow? That's okay. It could be like, where do you want to live? It could be something about a job. But I want you to have a decision in your head while we were talking that you could apply some of these principles to. So let's just take a second. People that are online, put into chat, just please, I'm asking, just 2 or 3 of you into chat, some decision that you're thinking about. And I'm going to call on someone here. Who's willing to share their decision? What's your decision? Tomorrow is, what's your name? Oh, Api, okay, so I can remember your phone. Is Api going to work from home or go to his cousin's place? That's a decision. Now think about it. Which will create more options for yourself? Potentially. Working from home will create more options for yourself or working at your cousin's place? Okay, working from your cousin's place has the opportunity, may not, but has the opportunity to potentially create more options for yourself. I'm not saying that that's what you should do, but it's important to keep in mind what can happen. Different things can happen if I'm speaking at an event. Different things can happen. If I'm traveling to a new city, different things can happen. If I go out tonight and do something interesting, different things can happen. If I stay at home playing video games all day, not as many things are going to happen from that. Who wants to share another thing, that decision that they're thinking about? Yeah. Oh, great. Writing a book. Okay, Kathy, that's a big decision. Actually, you know what? It's not a big decision. Because you can always start the book and decide to put it on pause. Too many people think things are too big. That's a great one, Kathy. Why don't you write a book? I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Any others? Yeah. Your name? Alice. Whoa. Okay. So Alice is debating about whether or not to move back to Southern California. As we walk through the 10 principles, think about each of them in that context. Okay. So think about, yeah, please. So is that a question or? Oh, whether or not to reach out to someone about being your mentor? Oh, great. Great. What a great one. By the way, I would say the thing that has impacted me more in my career than anything else has been having mentors. In fact, Avram is one of my mentors as well. I learn a lot from him. So my answer is please reach out to the person. You have very little to lose if the person says no. The same as if you didn't ask in the first place. But think about it. It will create a lot of potential options. Having mentors create lots of options. Okay, so place to celebrate your mom's 80th birthday. Great. So again, think about all these in the context of what we're going to be talking about. Number 10 is decision-making, like I said. Let's go to here. Oops. Now we'll go to number, how do I make this happen again? Oh, that's fine. Oh, that works again. Okay, number 9 in decision-making. When you're making a decision, many people think the way to succeed in like business or in life is they see these CEOs, excuse my language, are like assholes. You know, the Elon Musks of the world or others that will remain nameless. They're like, oh, that's how I have to act to become a successful CEO. I need to make decisions that are asshole decisions. No, I would say that one of the key principles in decision making is to try to find out how to be kind in making a decision. And there's a huge difference between being kind and being nice. People mistake the two. So is it nice to fire someone? Not nice. Makes you feel bad, makes them feel bad. But it could be the kindest thing that you could do for someone to fire them and ask them to move on to another job. If someone wants to work on a project that they want to grow in from a career standpoint, that's not going to actually help the company. It's not nice to tell them, hey, that's not going to help the company. I don't think you should work on that. It could be kind because they can work on it and never actually gets implemented because it doesn't actually ever help the company. And then they could be ill-perceived for working on something that doesn't actually help the company. But oftentimes newer managers are like, sure, work on that. It'll be great for your development. That's not necessarily kind. That's nice, but not kind. So when thinking about decision making, number 9 principle is don't be an asshole, but also understand the difference between being nice and being kind. So that makes sense. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Disagreement has been demonstrated, study after study. You want to surround yourself by people who disagree. When people disagree with each other, better decisions get made, simply put. And one of the things I loved about when Avram and I worked at Seeking Out, I'm usually feel much about Seeking Out, but you're here stuff. When we worked at Seeking Out together, is our founder was extremely disciplined in creating Google Docs and having people review Google Docs prior to meetings. Amazon's famous for this as well. And having people add comments to Google Docs prior to meetings, etc. What was great about that was that disagreement could happen in like asynchronously in Google Docs, and people would add comments to each other's comments and disagree. And then you have a meeting, it actually helps the introverts out quite a bit. Because oftentimes in a meeting, introverts oftentimes need a little more time to process information. And they can't just go by the seat of their pants very quickly. So thinking about how do you facilitate disagreement, both in rooms, but how you just facilitate disagreement outside. Why is disagreement so important? Because it results in what? Better decisions. So that's another technique I try to do. I pause when I say something and I ask people to like say it out loud because it's more fun. When you said better decision, I was like, yeah, you're like, yes, nailed it. You feel good. So disagreement is number 8 in terms of decision making that'll help you. Surround yourself. And by the way, if you're a founder, you want to find people where there's healthy tension that you work with. And by the way, it's also true. I don't know if anyone has a significant other, but if you're in a relationship and there's no disagreement, that's not a healthy relationship either. Like healthy tension, I'm married now 23 years. You're married for 26 years. In those 3 years, that's how we also have. And like the power of healthy tension. And in an organization, by the way, if there's no healthy tension, it's not a healthy organization. If there's no tension between sales and product, it means one side is getting everything that they want, and sales is getting what they want, or product getting everything they want, and that's not healthy. So disagreement is really, really important. Okay, the other challenge I see in decision making frequently is a risk aversion. And I know that you've heard the cliche of like low risk, low reward, and it's a cliche, but sometimes cliches are cliches because they're also true. And like making bolder decisions is something that has had a very significant impact on my career. And I work with many people. Obviously, we have about 100 employees at Meetup, and I find that so often, especially people who might be a little more junior and less experienced in their careers, hello, good to see you. There's like this, there's this risk aversion that happens in decision making. And sometimes something that could take, should take a week or two to roll out, could take like 3 to 6 months to roll out, because everything has this like little baby steps and baby process. I'm not saying we should go from like, I do believe in the concept of crawl, walk, run, and not to go to like implement something across all of Meetup. Who cares if everyone likes it or not? But I think generally speaking, being bold is very, very important. Bold, not impossible. And I think if I ask each person, raise your hand here if you think that you're generally too bold when you make a decision. No one. Raise your hand if you think that there's probably a risk that you might not be bold enough when you make decisions. Okay. Vast majority of the room. And that's almost always the case. So I think the first step is almost like recognize the issue, recognize that you need to be bolder in making decisions, and then ask yourself, why am I not as bold as I could be in making decisions? And when you look at studies and research around why people are not as bold, the main reason is because of fear of failure. They're afraid of it. And the main reason that they're afraid of failing if you like pull back the onion, is because if they don't see the failure as a failure of an experience, they personalize it, people, and they say, I am a failure. And if you go into it saying, if I make a big decision, then it fails, then I'm a failure, and then how do I feel about my own self-perception? That's the challenge. So how do you understand that if you fail, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means you learned, you're a learner. You're a learner. And it's just like really understanding why people are reluctant to make bolder decisions. And we already talked about being speedy, so I'll skip through this one. I'm sorry that you missed it. But the importance of like success is about iterating, which means learning, which means getting their minimum viable decision kind of out there with the example that I gave already. So now I'm going to pause for a second again and see if people have questions. Can you do the thing like you? Like it. I know it's easy. Sorry, I don't mean to be Madonna here. And if anyone has questions about any of Be Speedy, oops, the 5 were, just to remind us all. Let's just do it here. What are the 5? Let's pull one out. Optionality was number 10. What was number 9?
Be kind.
Number 9. This is great.
True. Be kind.
Number
Be
8.
true. Bold. No.
Disagreement. What was number 7? Be bold. What was number 6? Be speedy. Okay. Do you have any questions about any of these 5? Okay. Let's actually, I always think it's important. I want to do someone online first, and we'll do it in the room. So online, put into chat any questions that you have on the first 5 before we go to the next 5. Okay, I'm going to go right back to you. Your question is in your name. Jamal.
I saw in making decision because I don't have enough data or I need some more understanding.
Right. I think you're in good company. I think you're like 95% of people. I think I liked how you hedged your question, which is you said, I stole because I don't have data. Then you said, I stole because I don't think I have enough data. And that's the reality is there's no objective measure to like how much data, because there is an infinite amount of data that you could possibly get for almost any decision. Why? Because in every decision you could talk to people. And talking to any person, and there's billions of people out there, will lead you to getting more data about any decision, likely. Now, they may not have a good answer, but you can get data, and you certainly do research, primary data, secondary, etc. So the first thing to recognize in data gathering is that there's an unlimited amount of data you can possibly get. So your call is not, is essentially not, do I have all the data that I need? Because it's important to say, I'm never going to have all the data that I need, ever. And once you kind of accept upon yourself that you're never going to have all the data you need, the real question to ask is, do I have enough directional data? And I use that term very, very, very intentionally, because that's what I like to say to people on my team. I say, do you have enough directional information that with 80% degree of confidence, not 99, now again, we're not trying to, create vaccines. Meetup was doing vaccines, we were for 99% perhaps, right? But we're not. And it depends on pharmaceuticals and other things. Maybe you need 99, maybe you need 99.9. I respect that. But in most industries, I'll usually say, do you have an 80% directional confidence that this is the right thing to do? And almost always, like again, 99% of the time, the person's like, I have that directional confidence. Thank you. And then we just move forward. So the point is, like I said, healthy tension is important. Feel comfortable being uncomfortable. Because if you try to be overly comfortable, then you're going to end up you're going to end up taking forever to make decisions, right? So embrace the uncomfort, discomfort. Uncomfort's not a word. Arnie asks, how do you find people who disagree with you to arrive at a good decision? Oh, I love that. Okay. So thank you, Arnie, for asking that. So when people talk about diversity, sometimes people do it in the context of diversity is important. Or they do it as a like perfunctory, type of way. And if you ask them why, they're like, because diversity is important. Diversity is important because it allows you to bring people in who have very different life experiences and work experiences than you. If you have an all-male executive team, you have an all-white executive team, you're going to make worse decisions in everything that you're planning on doing. Just like, by the way, if you have an executive team that's all former salespeople, or an executive team that's all current or former engineers, like diversity of past experiences and life experiences is critical in making better decisions. Like I deeply believe in it. So when Arnie asks, how do you find people who disagree with you to make surviving decisions? So two things I look for, Arnie. Number one is people who have a different background and experience than I do. Super important. The second thing I look for is people who are comfortable stating their mind, stating their opinions. It's really important to have people who will walk into my office and say, you don't know what you're talking about, and let me tell you why. I love that. It gives me so much joy for anyone to tell me, I think you're totally off. Now, they don't have to say it not nicely. They can say respectfully, I don't agree. And then when someone doesn't agree, the first thing I say is, thank you. Sorry, I know it just cut off. I say thank you. So one of the most important things to do as a leader is to reinforce the behavior that you're trying. How often do you leaders will say like, I want people to disagree, and someone disagrees, you don't know what you're talking about. To such an extent that frequently I will go with something that someone says, even though I do disagree, because I want to encourage the behavior of people disagreeing more often. And if every single time someone disagreed, we didn't end up going with something that the person said like every time, then people would stop disagreeing because they wouldn't see a purpose in it. So you have to create a culture, Arnie, of disagreement, ideally in your family. I don't have that problem with 3 teenage kids. Ideally, with work, it's all very important. Okay, 6 new messages. Okay, we can't get, I don't know if we're gonna get to all 6, but I'll have to answer this much faster. Okay, Priya. Oh, maybe it's all the same one. When you are thinking in this plane, you use number 10 to number 7, what if the other person is not in the same plane that they need to go and educate themselves? You might perceive as being too kind, not being bold. Okay, so yeah, so the challenge is you don't live in a vacuum, you don't live in a bubble. We're dealing with other people who aren't necessarily kind, who aren't necessarily bold. So, how to read my book? I would say I agree. I think when you're dealing with, if you're dealing with a senior person in an organization who is not a kind person, you're not going to be able to get that person to be kind. Like, let's just know what you can do and what you can't do. I could tell you, you could try this, you could try that. It's like, when someone's an unkind person, they've been unkind for a long time, probably, you're not going to change that. You want to leave that organization. I mean, it's that simple. You can't be an organization where the leadership is like an unkind group of people. It's just not the place where I would want to be at. I care about things too much. Someone who works for you is unkind. That's where coaching comes in. Someone who works for you doesn't make bold enough decisions. So if people are your colleagues, if people work for you, it's a lot easier to give them that kind of coaching. But someone like kind of that you're subordinate to, there's very little you could do to truly change, unless you have a deep relationship already. But if you don't have that deep relationship, it's very hard to actually change behaviors of people who you report into. Okay.
You want to do another question?
Yeah, we'll do one more. And then we'll think some more. We'll do one more. Keep going.
Yeah.
Kathy, sometimes quite difficult to work with the reason there are problems with some of the rules that you're learning. Okay, keep going. Let's go. You recommend that people take an inductive approach to make decisions to be efficient. Inductive. Someone's explain what intuit. What does inductive mean?
This is true.
Oh, like, okay, A equals B, B equals C, C equals Z, like transitive property, I guess, or something. I didn't know that's what inductive meant. Good to know. Did you know that? Now we know. Is that, hopefully that's what you meant, Katsuko. So I don't know. I think that people probably spend too much time applying logic to decision making and don't appreciate the emotional and psychological element of decisions. I think that like 90% of decision making, people's reaction to decisions, is more influenced by psychology and emotions than it is by logic. That's just been my experiences. So I wouldn't get too logical is my answer. Logic's important, but understanding the implications on others is probably even more important. Okay, let's keep going. Yeah, please. And then I'll repeat it because they can't hear you. Wait, hold on. Might work. There you go.
It's quite a bit of research that shows in areas where you're an expert, you can have quite a good gut or something, and therefore you don't need to take a particularly inductive approach. And so if your gut is saying, you know, this, then you should probably go with that, because thinking inductive approach might end up with what's worth decision. Whereas with something you know very little about, it's quite easy to make a decision that could be completely wrong. And so you have to try and figure out where you are on the scale, certainly my personal experience, because I can sometimes make a very quick decision in an area that I have no experience in and really regret it later. Because that's when I find out later that I should have spent some time thinking through.
Thank you. Aram is referencing a lot of studies, but one of them is a famous book by Malcolm Gladwell called Blink. And what Blink kind of talks about is it 1,500 hours? Do you remember the number of hours? Or is it 10,000? Thank you. Is that outliers? Not Blink? Okay. So Blink is the concept of gut-based decision making. Okay. In Outliers, he also talks about the concept of 10, or maybe it's even tipping point. I don't remember which one it is, but of 10,000 hours, about how after you work on something for 10,000 hours, then you really have that like really strong gut. Okay. Thank you, Albert. Okay. Question for the room. Know yourself. You tend to overly emphasize, and for everyone who's virtual, please put this into chat. So Pamela and Jenny and Priya and Solazar, do you prioritize, we don't need to put chat up, it's okay. But do you just put it in chat though, because I want you to like know it and say it. Are you more of a short-term decision maker? Prioritize the short-term too much, or do you prioritize the long-term too much? Just put in in chat. You tend to prioritize short-term in decision making, or long-term in decision making too much? I'm going to ask the question here. Short-term or long-term? Short-term. Long-term. 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 Raise your hand if you're a short-term decision maker. Half the room. Raise your hand for long-term decision maker. Half the room. Okay, maybe it was like 60% long-term, 40% short-term. I've done this in lots of places, and hopefully, we're seeing the same thing online, much more long-terms than short-terms in chat as well. People who tend to be more ambitious career-wise, quote unquote, successful, tend to overemphasize the long term. I am a deep believer personally in putting more energy and focus into the short term. Here's why. Let me just explain why. I want to make a data-driven decision. You want to make a data-driven decision. What's the quality of my data for a decision that can impact me right now? Pretty good, short term, pretty good. Because I know what I care about. I know what my goal is right now. So if my goal is to have a great dinner, and I probably could go to a good restaurant, have a great dinner, like the meal, great. But what about if my goal is something in 10 years from now? Well, I've changed a lot in the last 10 years. A lot of things that used to be really important to me are actually not important to me at all right now. And some things that were like not important to me at all are like crazy important to me right now. And I see the head nodding, and I think it's true of everyone. So one of the things that is so dangerous about long-term decision making is that you could be optimizing for a decision that you don't even care about in the future. I'm not saying we should all be hedonists. I'm not saying we should all only care about the short term. That's obviously ridiculous. What I am saying is that it's important to make yourself as happy as you can and joyful in the short term, while hopefully trying to set yourself up directionally for long-term success. And even if you're not doing that part, what I would say is a part of the reason also that I've been successful, whatever success actually means, because maybe I haven't been successful at all by other people's measures of success, is I'm a very happy person. And when you're happy, you actually attract other people around you who are also happy. And other opportunities happen to you just out of the blue because you kind of have a positive, optimistic mentality. Now, because I try to prioritize things that are positive in the short term for myself, that's how I'm also able to be happier. And how many people do you know that are like, in 50, and when I'm 40, I'm gonna be able to spend more time with my family. When I'm 50, I'm gonna spend more time with my family. And they're 80 years old and they're still like working and have a rollator, they're walking around. And it's like, soon I'm gonna be able to spend more time with my family. It's like, we all know what's the song? Cats in the Cradle, right? So I would just say to encourage everyone when thinking about decisions, if you're a long-term focus and that's your natural inclination, balance it out with more short-term orientation. And if you're really in the present constantly, like one of my kids, and not thinking about the long-term at all, then balance it a little bit more to the long-term. But most people probably need to spend more time enjoying and focusing on short-term. I went back to my yearbook quote when I was in high school. My yearbook quote in high school was the following. I was 17 years old, and it was the following. I don't know how I knew this, but I wrote, sometimes in our pursuit of happiness, it's important to pause and just be happy. And I guess I believed in that when I was 17. Now, 47, 30 years later, I hopefully try to believe in that as well. Okay, we're going to wrap up soon. Honesty is super important in decision making. This is a cartoon of a guy named Fred Wilson, who's one of the most famous venture capitalists who runs a firm called Union Square Ventures. When Meetup was getting sold, I tried to sell Meetup to Fred Wilson. He said, I started telling him about Meetup's strategy. He said, I don't care. I started telling him about Meetup's KPIs, 30 million connections. I don't care. Leadership don't care. What do you care about? I said, I only care about one thing. You. Like, okay. So we started doing back channel, asking people that I worked with 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, tons of people. And I heard from LinkedIn, David, Fred Wilson just told me, here what it was like working with you back 10 years ago. Tons of back channeling to find out about me. And he says to me, David, you are beloved by so many people. And there's also a few people who absolutely hate you. They cannot stand you. And I'm like, well, I fired a lot of people in my career because I understand there are people who fired with you. Other people who work with you. No. You end up not pursuing. I share the story because I want to share an honest story. And also I want to share that your reputation matters. If you're not honest, it's carried through your entire career. If you are honest, it's also carried through your entire career. Being honest in decision making is a very important principle. When you're a leader, making decisions, don't just do what's best for yourself. It's very easy to especially when you try to climb the career ladder, to do those things that are only good for you. At one point, I ran a division of a pharmacy chain. It's similar to Long's, Long's here. There's no pharmacy chain. We want to put readers acquired by Walgreens. And I'm not going to go into the business, but it was an ability to interact with a pharmacist 24/7 through kiosks that we placed in doctors' offices and different companies. It was also in 2003, and my video conferencing was horrible. And the machines kept breaking down. We expanded to 200 different locations. And I kept hiring people, and I had 50 people on my team. I was so excited that I kept doing what was best for me. And then I was fired because it didn't work, and we shut the entire business down. And ultimately, people find out about when things don't work. Last two. Number two is I try to live by a principle, and I think it's a great principle to live by in your personal and professional lives. No decision surprises. Don't surprise your wife. Don't surprise your kids. Don't surprise your board of directors. Don't surprise the people that work for you. Don't surprise your colleagues. There's always things that you could do to avoid decision surprises. The reason why I care so deeply about it is because previous to this, I was CEO of Investopedia. At one point, the head of IAC, investment was owned by a big holding company called IAC, came into my office, and he said, David, I have a surprise for you. Why? We just sold your company. You remember this? And I was like, what? Like, there was no, we weren't even for sale. I know, we sold Investopedia and we only need one CEO. So we want to move you to another position at IOC. And I was like catatonic. Because my son just had started as an intern the day before. That was kind of uncomfortable. And at that point in time, I swear to myself that I would never surprise others. And even sometimes, like this person who works for me, it's not working out. And I believe in doing something called a transparent separation. And I said, in 2 months from now, it's going to be your last day when you take time, find other things. But, and I'd have been, he wasn't surprised. He'd been leading up to this for a while. But even for a termination, I try not to surprise people, you know, the best that I possibly can. Last thing is know your biases in decision making. And what I found is in business and life, there's 4 of the most common biases that are out there. We're going to talk about these 4 biases. I'm going to put this back to this. There we go. There's 4 common biases that people have in decision making. Number 1 is recency bias. Recency bias is like, I had a head of marketing. Sorry for these examples. I know you don't have a head of, maybe you do have a head of, but I had a head of marketing and this person was overly focused on building brand. And I really need my head of marketing to be very data driven. So now when I have my new head of marketing, I'm going to go get someone that's just data driven. It's like, I just went out with this person. The thing that most annoyed me about the person I broke up with was XYZ. I'm going to find someone the exact opposite of XYZ, not taking into account the 10 previous relationships that I might have had. And what's really been important to me in all that time is recency. Recency oftentimes is way overweighted in making decisions to the detriment of decision making. It's actually in a good way why in yoga, and I love yoga, at the end of yoga, you do something called Shavasana, right? You're lying there on the mat and it feels so good and it's so relaxing. And then you stop. You're like, I think I want to do yoga again. Right? Because the most recent thing you just did was this pleasant experience. Now, the last thing that you did was like standing here in some contorted position and you have to do like this, you know, for 10 minutes. And then they said, stop. I don't think you'd be like, I think I want to do that again. So recency bias is good, is something to be aware of. The second thing is confirmation bias. The confirmation bias is looking for data that just confirms what you already hold. It's like, I like to think that I'm a good investor. Really, I'm a terrible investor. So I should do the opposite. I only look at my stocks in my 401k when the market goes up. So like today, I did not look. Well, on Friday, when the market was up, 3%, I looked at it, I'm like, whoa, look at me, look how much I'm up. And my whole thing is way down. But so it's terrible. I just, confirmation bias is so dangerous because it goes against diversity of decisions, it goes against disagreement, it goes against so many things. So confirmation bias. Next one. Status quo bias, which is the inclination of some people to be in a bad job, to live in a city that doesn't work for them, to be in a bad relation, whatever the thing is, because it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. And kind of the bias for the status quo. And the last one is sunk cost fallacy. For me, my problem is every time I go out to eat, I'm like, well, I just spent $50 on this meal. I need to eat every single thing that I just ordered because I don't want to waste the money that I spent. Really, I'm eating the food to be happy. Then I feel all bloated and disgusting afterwards. And I don't think to myself, well, it was a sunk cost. It's the same reason why people stay in cities. Well, I've been investing 5 years into this relationship. I invested 5 years into this, invested 5 years into this job. Yeah, so you just invested 5 years. You probably get out now because you already spent the 5 years. What's the right thing to do now? So again, in chat, you can set this up. In chat, I want you to put in either recency bias, confirmation bias, status quo bias, or sunk cost fallacy. Put one of those 4 items into chat about what you think is your most challenging bias. Put that into chat right now. And hopefully we'll see some of them start flowing through. So here we go. Anyone? Well, you always ask, you ask great questions, so I'm sure you're going to be putting in some things. Okay, let's do it here. Yeah. Sunk cost fallacy is your problem. Number 3, status quo bias is your challenge. Confirmation bias is yours. Anyone from recency bias? Recency bias is yours? Okay, recency bias is your challenge. Confirmation bias by Priya. I see another confirmation bias. I think what it comes down to is, again, same kind of thing for decision making. Just know your bias, know your biases, and check yourself and tell the people that help you to make decisions, hey, I have a problem in that I way too often have sunk cost, status quo bias. So I know that I have that. So as my friend, I need you to push me out of my status quo because that would help me more than anything else. And if you ask your friends, if you ask your collaborators in decisions, and you tell them what your biases are, it will help you to remove those biases. And just acknowledging in the first place is the first step. But having people around you that can help to alleviate those biases is really helpful too. Okay, so we're going to go to any questions. I know it's actually the hour's late. Yeah, I know I need to click that on. Now I need to do this. Okay, so just as a reminder, these are the top 10. One more drum roll. Ah! In thinking about decisions, optionality, being kind, disagreeing, being bold. When you give a presentation, by the way, the best way for people to remember the things that you said is to always have a summary at the end, right? And this one thing, if you say the summary, it's another thing if you actually put it on paper and to see. Because some people are auditory and some people are visual. But ideally, you want to do both auditory and visual so that it's cement. Because the goal of talking is not to talk, it's that people take something away from the talk, right? So be bold, be speedy, balancing, knowing your inclinations of short versus long term, being honest, doing what's right for business, no decision surprises, and understand your biases. So those are my top 10. If someone wants to get it on Amazon, they get it on Amazon. If you don't want to get it anywhere, don't freaking get it. It's also available on Audible if you want to get an audio copy of it. And if anyone wants it here, then I have a couple of copies over here. And if anyone wants a signed copy who's not here, I'm happy to sign a copy and someone here can get it over to you as well. This is how you can contact me. I love LinkedIn. So if you just type in David Siegel Meetup, you'll find me on LinkedIn. Send me a LinkedIn invite and you can send me an email, david@meetup.com. That way we can stay in touch because I love learning from people and staying in touch. And hopefully I'll just end with this reminder of the top 10. It's 7:37. They will wrap up in 5 minutes. Is that okay? Wrap up in 5 minutes. And let's just put up any questions that people might have. And why don't you tell me, you look at the questions, tell me any questions that people have. Is that okay? Okay, I'll take one here and then we'll look online for any last question. Any questions regarding anything? Yeah, remind me your name. Wait, remind me your name. Letta. Oh God, okay, consensus. So there's a famous line by Winston Churchill. The line by Winston Churchill is democracy is the worst form of government besides every other form of government. Okay? Meaning democracy is not such a bad form of government. Why do I say that? People look at consensus as the way to make decisions. In reality, it's a demonstration of weak leadership. Because oftentimes leaders are afraid that other people won't necessarily follow what they should be doing. And they look for consensus. And if you look for consensus, you're going to be stuck in paralysis, usually, because people come with too many different biases and too many historic experiences to end up really having consensus. So as a leader, I don't look for consensus. What I look for is information and feedback. I want as much feedback as possible. And I am comfortable at times, not all the time, but at times, being what's called an island. And saying, I'm going to be an island on this one. I'll call it out. I know that you all don't think it's the right decision, and if I do it all the time, I'm going to lose my team. But you have to be comfortable being an island. You have to be comfortable saying, I know this is only the minority of people. We're not going to go with a consensus. We're going to go with, I'm going to hear everything, but there's a difference between hearing and listening. I'm going to hear everything, but I'm going to listen and act on the things that I think are the right decisions. So I think management by consensus is very, very dangerous, honestly. Management by getting lack of feedback is equally, if not even more dangerous. They're both very dangerous. Good, questions? Let me go over here. Do you talk about 10 decisions? Yes. So in the book, I basically tell lots of different stories and experiences about each of these kind of 10 decision-making principles. And I keep coming back to those different, sorry, battery's low. Uh-oh. Hope we'll be okay. But yes, in the book, keep talking about that's kind of, yes, the answer is yes. That's how you get to decide and conquer. I'll take one more. Solar czar, I saw you earlier. How do people, how do people factor into doing what is right for business? Okay, I love it. So you are not doing what is right for your business if you marginalize your team, because your team will leave. You are not doing what's right for business if you are not motivating your team, because the team won't be motivated. You are not doing what's right for business if you don't give credit to people on your team, because they're not going to, again, feel great about the things that they did and want to keep doing and keep succeeding. So I think there is a direct correlation. Sorry, there's a direct correlation. In fact, I would even say causation, not just correlation, between taking care of people on your team and doing what's right for business. And there's no difference between the two. That's what I would say. So thank you for asking that, because that's a really important point. Okay, next question in the room, and then I'll repeat it.
I have a question. I'm interested in knowing how did you build up your personal branding?
Okay.
Did you always like the presentation, even like in the corporate world, or just to make it everyone feel loose up and feel like very approachable?
Good. And remind me of your name again?
Alice?
Alice, you asked before, so thank you, Alice. Okay, so the question, if you didn't hear Alice, was how did you build up your corporate brand and your presentation style, I guess? Personal brand, thank you, personal brand. I don't even know, let me say this. I don't believe in building a personal brand. I'll explain. I believe in being as authentic as possible. So I think if you are confident, which I am, I struggle with trying not to be too confident, which is cocky, which is very dangerous and a problem. But if you're confident, then it allows you oftentimes to be your authentic self. And when you're your true authentic self, then that's the best way that you could be a brand or a leader, or just, how you show up. And when you have anxiety, when you're not comfortable in your skin, then you have to put on an artificial air about yourself. And what I would say is the best things that people can do to build their personal brand is to be comfortable with who they are first. And if they're comfortable with who they are first, and then they could be their authentic self and hopefully be the best authentic self that they could be, then that's what makes people most successful. In terms of speaking, I used to be a crazy nervous speaker. I was terrified when I was a kid in school. I remember we used to go around and I know, oh my God, I'm going to be called in 5 people. And we called on 4 people, like they go around the room. And I would get all sweaty, like super sweaty. And I would be so nervous. And I have to read it out and never raise my hand in elementary school. I almost never raised my hand in the entire high school. I never spoke publicly really in high school until one time I realized this is a real problem. I need to fix this. I need to do something. And I decided I would start a club in high school. And I started a club. And because I was forced to become the leader of the club on myself, it pushed me to then actually be the speaker and kind of the leader of this. It's called the Current Events Club. We were talking about different current events that were happening, have debates and disagreements about things. And that really helped me get me out of my shell. And I think Toastmasters, I'll just end with this. Toastmasters is an incredible organization. The number of people that I know that have grown personally and professionally, build confidence personally and professionally through Toastmasters, build relationships through Toastmasters. It's not to say it's in the hundreds, but it's in dozens of people. I worked at a company and we had Toastmasters come to our office at Everyday Health and also at Investopedia in order to have a Toastmasters club where people could grow from that. So I just want you to applaud yourselves, and online, I want you to applaud yourselves as well for taking the initiative to try to build skills, build confidence, and build relationships, because it has a positive impact in every single thing that you're going to be doing. So give yourselves a round of applause. And I think, and with that, I see other questions, but I also kind of say I don't want to be too that guy. So I hope this is helpful. Avi, I wanted to thank you for volunteering, and also Anna and also Kalpana for helping to facilitate this conversation. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with meetuppers. One of my dreams, what I try to go to a meetup event every week. Sometimes I attend, sometimes I speak. I just wanted to thank you so much for the time. Thank you again.
From our district, District 101.
We are a District 101 Toastmasters organization, which has produced millions and millions of Toastmasters since its inception.
Wow.
It's almost actually 100-year-old organization.
Yeah.
We have a small gift for you.
We have a small gift for you from our district for visiting us.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
You will remember us by, because it's a Toastmaster goodie.
I'm so excited.
You go order from there. Remember us?
Oh, yeah. Hydration is very important. Thank you. And I can even flip them from vodka if I ever need it.
So thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming.
Thank you.
We'd like for you to show us your book.
Oh, sure. Okay. So anyone that wants a copy, I'm opening up otherwise. Here, I have a few copies here that I brought. I have a book on my back. Anyway, here's a book. Looks like this. If anyone wants one, just let me know. Basically, I'm not trying to make money or anything like that, but it's $20. Give me the book, sign the book, and $20. Give me the book, sign the book, and well, you read the book and you can give me any feedback, on the book as well. So, whatever you want, it could be Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, or Tap, whatever you want. But I decided to. I'll sit over here and whoever wants to let me know, and you got it. Go for it.
All right, gentlemen, that is the end of our official part of the meeting.
Thank you so much.
Zoom call. We appreciate you guys all being our guinea pigs for our first hybrid meeting. We're going to keep getting better and better and bringing more quality events like this to District 101.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Abhijit, for organizing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Solarzar. Thank you for hosting.
You're
us.
welcome. Hey, Abhijit, what if someone online wants a signed copy of the book? What
Okay,
could they do?
perfect. Who's that? Yeah, I can get the book.
So is there anyone who wants a signed copy of the
Is it
book?
Priya?
Priya,
Okay. Perfect. I'll get one. Anyone?
Pamela?
Pamela? Okay, perfect.
David, did you want one, David? Is that your thumbs up for that?
So Priya and Pamela. Okay, I'll
Right.
get perfect.
Thank
David,
you
you
so much.
put your thumbs up again. Are you saying you want a book? Oh, yes, he put in the chat. He would like a
Okay.
book. So
Perfect.
that's three.
Three. Okay, sounds good. So Pamela, Priya, and David. I'll get three. Okay.
All right, and how do we connect? Are you going to connect with us to find out how to gather?
Yes,
or-
yes. Email
Okay.
me. I'll put my email address here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's only $1,500, by the way. So
All right. What a bargain.
wire transfer to Abhijit's account.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Perfect, perfect.
All right, so we're all done, Abhijit, or?
Yeah. I'll get the books, okay?
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. It was excellent. Really new things I learned. Thank you.
Yes, I'll send the copy of the presentation. I have the copy of the presentation. I'll share it with everyone. Okay?
Hey, Abhijit.
Bye.
Good night, all. I'm going to end the meeting, so.
Good night, all.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you so much, Salter, for putting this together.
Yes.
No, Abhijit did it. Abhijit.
Oh,
is helping out.
Abhijit. Oh, well, thank you.
I'm just
Yeah.
here. I'm just here.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.